Netherlands beating the USA in the stages at the knockout, last 16. Netherlands getting the job done. Early goal from Memphis Depay, followed up by Blind. Haji Wright pulled one back in the second half with an unusual finish before Denzel Dumfries rounded things out nicely. Poor goals conceded by the US, but at the end of the day, as I mentioned before, Heath Pearce, this was a very well-coached game by Louis van Gaal.
Yeah, and it came down to details. All the little details that you can overlook in the group stages because perhaps the team doesn't punish you or perhaps they don't have the quality of the finish. I mean, they scored the same goal twice. The cut back to the top of the box of a late runner and being able to put it away first time. I mean, these are the things that we've talked about. We've bragged about our sixes or a double pivots being able to cover that ground and always protecting that back line. The 2 times they don't show up, Netherlands find that ball and they put you away. And that's the difference, again, of going from the group stages of the round of 16 to the quarterfinals. You have to be almost perfect in those situations. You look at the other end, the U.S. actually had a couple cutbacks. You know who was there? Frankie de Jong to blast the ball up out of the danger area and cover that type of ground. And those types of details, I think, are all the difference. Obviously, people say it could have been different if Pulisic scores his goal early on in the match. I still think it would have been a very, very long match for the U.S., considering the tactical shifts and their unwillingness to sort of change the way that they played or find a different way to be impactful in this game. And I just look at the Netherlands, and they haven't played particularly great either. This is the first time that I saw them really come out and say, we're going to play this type of system. We're going to play it differently. We're going to keep the U.S. guessing. Let's see if they can adjust. And I think going back to when the U.S. played Saudi Arabia, when the U.S. played Japan, when the U.S. played some of these matches in the past where they really struggled Uruguay to break these different systems down, it was indicative in this case that they didn't have a second or third or a fourth plan depending on what the circumstances were. And knowing that our team's struggling to get goals, once they got that first goal, they sat back even deeper and invited more. And then from there, you could just tell it was almost a lost cause. Having said that, somewhat proud of this, proud of the way the team fought through the group stages. But if we want to be a true global giant, or if we want to say that we're a favorite to go into the 2026 World Cup or compete for the 2026 World Cup trophy, we've got a long ways to go.
Well, Heath took some great points that I was going to mention. I'm going to be nice. I'm not going to be too hard, but
he stole your
Heath
notes.
Is right. No. I love Heath's honesty. He's one of the few people that's actually be very honest about it. And my thing is this. I love it. I think they've done well. I think they progressed. But the reality of it is, if you want to be the best, and I'm speaking for all three of us here, I'm sure we do it. We looked at challenging the best. We wanted to play against the best. That's why you want to be the best. So you have to hold yourself to a very high standard. We talk a lot about Pulisic. For me, that should have been a goal.
Yes.
If Pulisic is America's superstar, world superstar, that should have been a goal. And I'm not.
Hey, Nigel, real quick. I said this on In Soccer We Trust too, and I'm curious your thoughts. Did it feel at all to you like he kind of had this half-assed, like I think I'm offside type of finish, offside, where it was like it was kind of a little casual thinking? Rarely do you find yourself in that point of a game, that open one-on-one with the goalkeeper, that your mind immediately goes.
Yeah, but Heath, by the way, also that's a freaking great save, man.
Come on, it's a poor connection. You could see it. Like he didn't seem committed to it. My thing is this, Heath. He should have put it in the back of the net because you're taught that from young. Put it in the back of the net. If it's offside, it's called habits. When I look at this game today, my analysis of the game is Van Gaal showed his experience. He changed the way the Dutch played. What did they do? Let's defend from the front, but let's force them inside. Let's force them into our midfield, into that pocket where we've got more bodies around them. We win the ball back. One player you don't want the Dutch to win the ball back and have in an instant is Frankie de Jong. You don't want him to have the ball. He is one of the best passers in world football. So we put you into where we're all covered, more bodies, win that ball, we can break on you quick. It was not rocket science. And I think when you concede 2 goals like USA did, Heath, that was tactics. Yep. That was Louis van Gaal saying, get to the byline. I've seen how America defend. The back four goes so far deep in line with whoever has the ball in the attacking player sense. Cutbacks, late runs into the box will get you goals. It happened twice. I know people are saying as well, oh, Tyler Adams, you need to follow your runners. You're in the World Cup. You cannot be telling players to follow runners at the World Cup, at the highest level of football. If you're telling players to follow runners, they should not be in the World Cup. And like you said, that's the part. I think for me, again, Frankie de Jong gave a top-class midfield performance because he was everywhere. He controlled the game, great on the ball in tight areas. And when USA did get down the line a few times and had 1 or 2 cutbacks, Frankie de Jong wasn't running back to clear the ball. He was already in the space, coming onto the ball easily. And this is why I said before, and I've said it to you, Ian, before once. when I say there's a difference between athletes and footballers. And today we saw why the Dutch are footballers and America still relies too much on the athleticism. And that is what Louis van Gaal exposed, because the way they played, if America had a threat and number 9, a real recognized goal scorer, I don't feel the Dutch would have played that way, because they know they're still not playing at their best. They're still slightly vulnerable. But because they know America doesn't have that threat, that's why they encourage them to say, all right, come inside, come down the heart of us. You don't have that creativity.
Yeah. Listen, I think this was the best opportunity for the US to get at this Dutch side. As Heath pointed out earlier on, the Netherlands were not great going through the group stage. They looked pretty poor. And I thought, wow, we really do have a good chance here. We knew that the US didn't have that striker. They don't have that freaking killer that we know they've been lacking for a while now, and desperately need in the future going forward. You need to find, or at least we need to find somewhere in the United States of America or around the world, someone who can be a killer around that penalty area. But the US, I think, had enough quality in the game to do more damage than they did do. Now, the goals against are what pissed me off more than anything else. Now, you talk about the attitude, and we can say tired minds, people being sleeping. We can talk about this, right? I call BS on all 3 goals, right? The first goal, from my opinion, Heath, I'd want you to really follow up on me, because you've been in this position. You know what it's like in big games like this, especially when it comes to US national team, when you're playing for your country with the media presence and all that BS, right? Adams has got to run back there. He didn't even notice. He was ball watching the whole time. He didn't even notice him running. Memphis running to the top of the box. He didn't even notice. There was no sprint getting back. It should be an automatic tuning of your brain. You're in trouble. Get back. Get goal side. Didn't do it. Sloppy. It's not, for me, it's uncharacteristic of him. I've never seen him do that in this World Cup yet. So to do it in a knockout stage game was ridiculous to me and very upsetting. Then you go to the second goal. Dest was attacking. Love to see that from him. But my, oh my, you cannot switch off at the back post like he switched off. His delayed reaction to close down at the top of the box when you've conceded a goal just like that was desperately disappointing. Now you go to the third goal we concede. Lack of communication. And you have to say Dumfries was there. He took an airplane an hour ago to get into that position. Nobody even saw him there. Robinson was just, Ream was just inside Mark. No, communication, decision-making. This is the World Cup, man. In the knockout stages of the World Cup, we expected better from these key players. Now, that's my rant over, because I'm really proud of the boys in getting to this stage. But in big games like this, you cannot make mistakes like that.
Yeah, I fully agree. And again, to second that comment, it all comes down to these little details. And I feel like the U.S. group stage didn't prepare them enough for a better opponent, right? I go to the Dumfries goal, and it was like you were playing in a club match where you're like, what's the odds this guy can pick out this pass, you know? Then you realize, oh, Daley Blind can pick out this pass on the back post. He put it on a dime for him. And you know who can finish with the one chance they get? Dumfries can. And he did that. Same with the cutbacks. Oh, the cutback, what are the, like kind of almost thinking like, do they have the quality to string 3-4 passes together to put it away? They absolutely do. And guess what? That's in the round of 16. The team that you're going to play in the quarterfinals is even better at that. The team you're going to play in the semifinals is even better at that. They're more clinical, and they will bury you if you give them a chance. And so when I think about those opportunities, I think back to the fact that we were really celebrating the idea of the identity of this team. Not a lot of changes. We went through qualifying, and we were like, we could sit on here and the 3 of us would be like, what's your predicted lineup? And we could have 6 players different. We could all be off by 5 players of the team that Gregg Berhalter would actually put out. Then we got to the World Cup, and we actually had some consistency. Unfortunately, 4 matches in, we saw some fatigue. Yunus Musa looked tired. Weston McKennie looked tired. And earlier parts in the game, actually first 10 minutes, I'll give the U.S. that. They actually looked settled in. I was like, man, we actually might be able to play with this Netherlands side.
I agree.
But then as soon as the going got tough and the game got fast, and the decisions got harder. The decisions were more often than not wrong, and that fatigue kicked in. So even when we got our first goal, usually you see that come to life. The U.S. is like, okay, we believe in something. Something magical is going to happen where the U.S., we can fight through it. There was nothing. There was no, you saw no ascension of energy where all of a sudden we felt like we were back into it. They were out of it from what I thought the first goal to the very end, and it's unfortunate. Having said that, I don't want it to be too negative. I do think that there's a lot of things to be proud of with this young squad who had never been in a World Cup before. One player in the squad had played in a World Cup and didn't really even feature much in DeAndre Yedlin. So there's a lot to build off of. And when you look at the dynasties or at least the people chasing a dynasty, so to speak, of the Belgiums of the world and the Germanys of the world, 2 bad examples in this World Cup. But they did 4, 6, 8, 10 years of a pretty consistent crop of players and adding pieces to that. Now the U.S. has that baseline and they can start to add players to that, because I promise you there's 7 or 8 players right now, maybe even 10 that haven't been capped, that are going to be hugely important for the World Cup in 2026. And now we need to keep building towards that. So it's a building block. Unfortunate the way that we went out, but it is what it is.
Mm-hmm. No, I love what you guys are saying. I think for me though, Ian, I'll slightly disagree with you when it comes to the goals. And I'll go back to, again, football intelligence. Because for me, like I said, when I criticize the US team, it's because if you want to be the best, you have to compare yourself to be the best. Don't keep on talking about, oh, we're going to do it, we're building. No, put yourself at that level. Put yourself under that kind of pressure and expectation now, in the sense of what you expect from the players. Tyler Adams, yes, didn't follow his runner. Would he do that for Leeds in the Premier League? I guarantee he wouldn't, because he knows he'll be off. And again, for me, that comes to communication. That comes for, if he can see the run and he's tired, shout out to Tim Ream, shout out to your defenders, runner on, be careful. And your coach in England to do 2 things, man and the ball. I always say this to players, space doesn't score, the man does. And there was an actual great moment in the game when Virgil van Dijk was running back, when US had the ball on the left-hand side, and you can see Van Dijk, he didn't go all the way to the byline to be in line with the ball. He stopped right on the edge of the 6-yard box because he could see where the USA player was. So he knows if they try and clip it there, he gives himself that time to get there. That is what I feel is still missing in the US game. These guys are great athletes, but they have to take their football intelligence to another level, recognizing danger, seeing how a player can score. How can he score in that sense? And that does come from coaching. That does come from coaching and holding these players to a higher accountability, saying, no, you need to do this. You want to be the best. You're going to play better teams. You're going to play top stars who can hurt you in the blink of an eye, and you have to be at that level. And some of this stuff can be done with communication to one another. There's so many times by just saying, runner, man on, stepping out, all those type of things make the game of football so easy and such a big difference. My thing is this, Ian, last before I say, if USA don't find themselves or find a way to produce a different maker and a recognized number 9, a striker where he could play great football, hold up the play, bring team higher up, I don't see any greater development for the next World Cup at home. And just because you're at home doesn't give you a right that you're going to win the World Cup, because every year you've seen it in Germany, you've got a great bunch of talent coming through. Uruguay are going to be angry. Every single one of these nations who are a small, insignificant size compared to the US market are constantly producing superstar football players. And when you talk about one nation in particular, for me, I look at Brazil. There's a superstar kid who might be getting bought by Real Madrid named Endrick, and he's 15 years old. And if you watch this kid play at 15 years old, then this is what I'm saying. US players should understand this is what you're competing against. This kid's 15 and he's playing at that level. So I just think that there has to be a bit done, and I think there has to be better coaching. I'm not blaming Gregg. I'm talking about the whole mindset in the coaching in US, in encouraging these players to be a bit more free in expressing their personality when it comes to being on the pitch.
2 quick answers from you both here, 2 separate questions. Heath, I'm going to come to you first. Gregg Berhalter, situation as of now, his contract runs out after this World Cup. Where does he go from here?
Well, I set the bar of getting out of the group stages, but when I looked at some of the in-game management and the fact that you've got 3.5 years, I'm kind of torn. Part of me is like, I'm going to give myself another week to figure out what's the next step, because what you don't want to do is bring in somebody. You don't want to wait 2 years like the U.S. did to get Berhalter, but you also don't want to bring in the next one emotionally. So I'm hoping there's a game plan of a transition, right? Because I do think Gregg Berhalter has progressed this group. This group has a belief and a desire that they didn't have before. They came in and experienced. You go to the Gold Cup, you go to Nations League, or Nations League, Gold Cup, World Cup qualifying, and now they've got a World Cup under their belts. That's an incredible amount of experience that this group has put together. But now you probably need somebody to take you to the next level. You need somebody that's going to take that on. But what you don't want is a major overhaul. Somebody to come in and say, hey, I'm going to change everything. I'm going to do all this differently. I'm going to get rid of this, the youth national teams, this and that. You need somebody who's willing to take some of that building blocks and take it to the next level. So I'm leaning towards a coaching change, but I still am trying to think about, make sure I don't speak too soon in my feelings and thoughts, knowing that, you could also quickly walk backwards if you get that wrong.
You're not ending there. Who are you bringing in then? If you're going to make a change, who's coming in?
I mean, it's really hard to say, because there was a stat that somebody threw out that no foreign manager has ever won a World Cup before. And if that's the ambition and that's the goal, it's really important. I think somebody who understands the U.S. culture and the melting pot of that culture, being that it's a melting pot of melting pots, very different than perhaps taking over a Spain that's got 100-and-something year history of the style of play woven into the DNA of the people. And so that makes it really limiting, right? And I start to look at it and say, who could you have? You have a Jesse Marsh. There's shouts for Jim Curtin. There's shouts for other managers that have done really well in the U.S. And again, I'm not really sold or convinced on who that next person could be that's going to take this or be incrementally even better than Gregg Berhalter at this point. So I'm still TBD that I lean towards a European manager or a South American manager or a more diverse manager that has all of the accolades, that is willing to come in with that right mindset. Whether they're willing to do that or not, we've seen a lot struggle at the MLS level, but the national team's different. It's really hard to say. I mean, I might even, by the next time I jump on here, is put on a short list of 5 candidates that I believe could be the right reasons and why, because right now there's a lot of give and take between each of them, whether you go domestic or international, and I'm just not sure what the right answer is.